I think y'all can probably see my screen. If not, let me know. So today I'm giving a talk that is super nerve-wracking, honestly, if I'm going to be really honest with you guys. If you've seen me talk before, you know I love crowds and stages and being the center of attention. I'm super nervous about this one. It gives me the shakes, and that's why you saw me grabbing a blanket earlier. I get real cold and I get nervous. So talking about overcoming addictions for sorcerers. So for the agenda, I want to go over why I'm talking about this, why I think this matters, and why I personally am talking about it. I want to go over a little bit about like what addiction is, go over the 12 steps, which if we've watched movies in the last 20 years, we've probably heard 12-step program at the very least, and then talk about some of the shared remedies that I've learned along my way. So why this talk? So I open up, and I'll open up as I do twice a week, every week for the last 3.5 years, which is, hi, my name's Mike, and I'm an addict. Not so much of a fun fact, but a lesser known fact until very recently is I do battle addiction. It's been something I've battled for, I don't know, how old am I? I'm 21, so more than 10 years. I'm also not 21. I've actually seen the ways that I overcome addiction run in parallel to how I've evolved my recruiting game. And so while I was battling addiction myself, right, and kind of running through this race and this battle that I was having, I put all my focus and my energy into overcoming that piece of my life. And I noticed along the way that like my family life, although a little bit further behind, was still there and was still moving forward. And at the same time, my job, and again, maybe a little bit further behind my family even, was also moving forward, was evolving, was running its own race as I went through this process. And so, as I mentioned, I battle addiction, and I have seen the ways that I overcame addiction and how it runs in parallel to my sourcing career. I think that sourcers are stuck in the tend to, not you guys, because all of you guys are awesome, but other sourcers get stuck in like the same old patterns or ways of doing things, right? And I don't think it's to anybody's fault. I just think it's the way that it's been, and it's what we've become used to. And I think to that point, breaking the cycle is really tough, right? It'd be really great if all of us could just go back and say, cool, I'm going to take the next 2 weeks to try to figure out these new things that I can do or these new skills to grow my career. But the bottom line is we have KPIs and metrics and things that you're required to do in order to make sure that you get a paycheck every 2 weeks and can make sure that you eat and have shelter. The big piece for me, the big changing point for me was looking at all of these conferences and webinars and posts and everything that gets put out there and realizing that last year, so 2019, I in person attended 19 conferences that I spoke at, 15 webinars that I was speaking at, and I attended another like 6 or 7. And I can tell you, I don't know, 12 things maybe I learned last year at all of them. But what I struggled with was how do you actually implement those things? How do you take all of that knowledge that you've learned at this 4-day event and actually put it into effect versus just conceptualizing and going, yeah, I get that, right? So for me, I want to be the person who's able to help, right? As Vanessa said, and I really appreciate that. I do have a big heart. It's what my company stands for, right? Like, yeah, we do sourcing contracts and sourcing work for clients, but at the end of the day, what we stand for is being the rising tide that lifts all boats, right? And so whether that's you're burning out, you're growing to hate recruiting, right, which happens to a bunch of us, or you're just not seeing the results you want. I want to be the person who's there to help other people now on their race and their battle with whatever it is they're facing, right? So, for my story, without getting into specifics of the addiction, because it honestly doesn't matter what it's to, um, what I'll tell you is I come from a large family, and there was a period of time where I did not talk to anyone in my family. I was not associated with them in any way whatsoever. My marriage was in jeopardy. We were separated. I have two amazing puppies and a really, really amazing wife. Um, and I made questionable decisions about lots of stuff. That picture should basically summarize most of that for you, right? Um, but here's the deal: addiction is ubiquitous, right? It is synonymous with human nature. And so I'll pose this to you and say, and you don't have to respond, but how many people think they have an addiction to something or some things? The short answer is almost everyone. Almost everyone, right? It doesn't have to be drugs or alcohol or gambling or sex or food. It can be working out, it can be working, it can be meditating, it can be anything that you're doing to escape what we call an intolerable reality, right? So, what is addiction? Addiction can simply, at its core, you can look up 100 different definitions, and they all boil down similarly to the continued use or action despite adverse consequences. Now, adverse doesn't have to be you're getting arrested or you're getting sick or things like that. It can just be that you're not hitting your goals. Your social life is suffering. Your marriage is suffering. Your health in some way is suffering. In any one of those, um, it's a negative action. It's a negative consequence, excuse me, for an action that may not even seem that negative to you, right? So let's understand it a little bit. When understanding addiction and when understanding any process that we get stuck in, it's important to understand the difference between our old brain and our new brain. Our old brain is that brain that focuses on survival, right? That's that when you hear like fight or flight, that's old brain, right? That's from thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of evolution, right? New brain is kind of what's come around now with creativity and technology. Some of the new pathways our brains have formed over time, more recently, that have a different effect on how we act. So when we're looking at like old brain behavior, if you guys know reward-based learning, the idea is it's based on positive and negative reinforcement. So really simply, you want to do more things that feel good and you want to do less things that feel bad. So that seems pretty like, yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, so here's the thing, right? Your brain tells you, well, food is good, right? Like when we were back in the caveman and woman era, right? You found food, which you didn't come across often, and you said, oh, this is really good. I want to remember this feeling, and I want to remember where this was so that I can find it again. Pretty straightforward. It's survival. But what's happened now is we're evolving, right? Food isn't really hard to come by anymore. So what happens when we get stressed? And we say, you know what? I'm going to go hang out with my best friends, Benjamin and Gerald, for a minute. You guys probably know them as Ben and Jerry. We're really close, right? And you're going to go and eat, and you feel better about it. And your brain tells you, ooh, I need to remember this. I need to know where I found that. That's the plus side of reward-based learning. Yay, survival. We don't really need that as much anymore. The downside is that escapism and relating unhealthy pathways to escape. The next is intermittent dopamine. So this is really tough in our industry, which is why I chose to bring this up, which is we work in an industry in highs and lows, right? We live in a world where people are focused on, well, how many hires did you get? How many placements did you get, right? And so you're like trucking along, nothing's coming. Holy smoke, starting to burn out, starting to get tired, starting to get weary and just like just worn down. And then all of a sudden, boom, make a placement. You get this dopamine hit. You did it. That's awesome. Yes, you feel great. And then back down again, back into the work, back into the process. And your body craves that dopamine hit. It's why cocaine addicts struggle so much. It's more dopamine than your brain is meant to have, and it comes intermittently, right? And so really important that we recognize that's an old brain and new brain functionality, right? In the old brain, that is how things like reproduction happened, for example. If it were really crappy, no one would want to do it and we would go extinct, more than likely. In the new brain, in this new world of creativity, we're seeking that high as often as we can get it. And when we don't, we drop back down into a state of what we'll call normalcy, right? Normal levels of dopamine. We're looking to get back to that high one more time, right? And chasing after that, and unfortunately tending to burn out. The next one is immediate gratification. I'm a millennial. For any of my other millennials in the crowd, I don't think we need this explained to us. We are the embodiment of this thing. But you want what you want now, right? It's available. Amazon Prime. Wait, it's going to take me 3 days to get that Amazon package. What the hell do you think I am, right? I'm an Amazon Prime member. I want it here in 2 days, right? When I was in New York City, depending on what you ordered, you could get it same day, right? Now that's what I'm talking. Wait, 5 p.m.? No. I wanted it 2 p.m., right? It's that idea of immediate gratification. So when you combine these things, you're finding ways of escaping a situation, right? i.e., in this case, food. You're getting that intermittent dopamine because it feels really good, right? You're removing the stress, taking in the Cherry Garcia. And you're getting that immediate gratification. You have to work for it. It just came right to you. You're like, boom, open the freezer, pint of ice cream, you're good to go. The next big thing outside of the old new brain is control. So this is the way that, unfortunately, it's evolved that we deal with uncertainty, right? How often do we not know what's going to happen or not have control over what's going to happen? And so we just try to exert some level of control over the situation that you don't have, right? Is that candidate going to accept the job? Oh, I don't know. Oh my gosh, are you going to be called in because your metrics are too low, or because this candidate didn't accept, or they left before 90 days, or oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? You don't know. It's uncertainty. It's part of life. It's discomfort, and that's okay, right? But we're going to try and naturally control it. That's where addictive tendencies tend to come in, right? Well, I can't guarantee that I'm going to find the right person and get them to respond, so I'm going to send 500 emails and try and control the outcome of this situation. And the last big one are emotions. We tend to live in a society these days where we want to fix our negative emotions or work around them. So when we're feeling sadness, anger, fear, we tend to want to go, okay, how do I deal with this? I shouldn't feel this. I don't want to feel this anymore. The bottom line is emotions are sublime. They come and they go. The good emotions and the bad emotions are all the same. It's just how they feel that is different. We as a society today have discomfort with discomfort. It's okay to not be comfortable all the time. And these are the main areas that lead to addictive behaviors, right? So how do you know if this is a thing that you're struggling with? How do you even identify it? Well, pretty obvious when there's just total catastrophe, right? When like you're not talking to your family and your marriage is in jeopardy and you're making questionable decisions. That's pretty clear. Another is a streak of similar bad situations. A lot of people say like, oh, what's the lowest common denominator, right? Like I got fired from my last 3 jobs. Well, that manager was a jerk and that team didn't do this right and that company. Yeah, I get it. But like, is it similar stuff that's kind of happening again and again and again? Maybe worth taking a look at yourself internally and seeing what's going on there. The other is just general dissatisfaction. Do you wake up feeling dissatisfied? When you have a great day, are you still going to bed feeling wanting, feeling missing something? For me, this is my North Star. Am I just not hitting the target? I know what I want to do, and just time and time and time again, I'm not hitting where I want. For me, that's my time to identify, hey, what's going on? Let me take a look at some of this stuff right now, right? And now when I take a look, I'm thinking, all right, what type of addictions are there in sourcing, right? I'm going to focus on sourcing for the majority of the rest of this. So like, I'll ask you guys, like, what type of addictions are out there, right? It's kind of rhetorical. It's not like it was actually a legitimate question. I have my chat screen up, so anybody want to throw something out? But hyper focusing, yeah, getting too myopic with your vision is definitely an addiction. I'll get us started then. What? Oh, going to the same well every time. Yeah, Boolean, OSINT. Ooh, Monsoon. I think Boolean is just a big old cup of broccoli. It's fantastic. So guys, maybe it's with tooling, right? Maybe you're obsessed with the newest and the latest and the greatest, and you're always exploring what else could I use? What else could I use? What else I could use at the detriment of doing your job. Maybe it's just that you're obsessed with emails, right? I'm a zero inbox freak show. I have to have a zero inbox at all times, right? So I'm checking my email. I'm sending email at all times of the day. And I always have my phone attached to me. Obviously, it's how I do business. How in the world could I possibly live if I didn't have my cell phone? I'd rather lose my wallet than my cell phone. And maybe it is that overworking that we're talking about, right? Maybe I'm obsessed with working 12-hour days, 14-hour days, 7 days a week, just pouring my heart and soul into it. And maybe what's driving that is an obsession with data. I need all the data, right? I need to wear my Apple Watch when I sleep so I can get my sleep data, when I'm working out so I can get my workout data and my step data. I need to track the exact number of messages I send, the number of people who responded, what platforms they came from. There is so much that you can get stuck on and focused on, right? A big one, though, is social media in general. How many of us wake up and one of the first 3 things we do is check one of these sites? We pop on Insta or Facebook, right? We check our tweets, Snapchat, if you're like a Gen Z. But how often are we stuck on this? And here's the deal, guys. Everyone struggles with this. This is not a sourcer-only dilemma. The problem is we also do work on all of these. So we're in a unique and really difficult situation because we're being told we need to be mindful, don't spend too much time on these sites. They are addictive. They give us that intermittent dopamine, that immediate gratification. Someone likes your post and you say, yes, that is awesome. People don't like your post and you say, oh no, what is wrong with me? Right? That shouldn't have the same effect as someone walking up and saying, hey, I love your outfit. Like, hey, it's really cool that you blah, blah, blah. But it does. And we live on them. So we need to be mindful. Are we addicted to these sites and to the dopamine and the feelings that we get when we use these sites? And the big one for recruiters, are we addicted to using LinkedIn? Right? We'll call it the Blue Devil for now. LinkedIn is created in the exact way that would propagate addiction. You're given a certain number of outreaches, and you are rewarded when anyone responds positively or negatively, right? You are rewarded your in-mail back, and you're searching. Don't worry about it. We'll help you run the searches. You don't have to get super specific. We'll pull everybody back, and sure, you can just mass reach out for some people to respond and get that fix. And no, you can't interact with any other platforms and bring over this data. This is going to be solely where you operate. If you're a LinkedIn recruiter user, that is where all your data stays, right? That's sad. That's exactly what addiction is like. Right? Sure, you can go and use those drugs, and you can be by yourself and everything is self-contained within that. And the only other people who are really going to understand you are other people who were using those drugs at that time. And people don't understand, why don't you go and like work out or go have a drink at the bar? And it's like, well, I can, I'm doing these drugs and this is what I do, and if I do something else, then I'm not going to know what to do. And this is going to be totally different. And everything's going to be messed up because LinkedIn propagates that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I actively use it. I'm saying that just like anything else that traps you within the confines of its own system, you have to be really, really mindful of the addiction behind it. Here's the stories that we tend to tell ourselves that I've heard, right? You guys can read this. I'm sure at some point we've heard this. My favorite is B, right? Well, blah, blah, blah doesn't work for us, right? People are like, well, I've tried Seekout or I've tried Loxo or Amazing Hiring, and like, they don't work for us. I'm like, really? Because like, I recruit for anything under the sun, anywhere on the planet, and I use them. So, is it that it doesn't work, or is it that you're comfortable in your old way? And it's when you try learning something new, you inevitably fail. And like, failing sucks, and we don't want to do it. Right? And so here's the hard truth, and this is going to hurt, and I apologize if I offend anybody's gentle sentiments here. But guys, first hard truth. It's been so long doing it the same way, it's probably become an addiction. It's the same reason when I'm looking for candidates for a job, if they've been at the same company for more than 8 or 9 years, I'm usually disqualifying them. They've probably been doing it the same way for that whole time. And while you may not look at it as an addiction, it's just the way that they've been doing it. Sure, try getting them to do it a different way. You're going to hear that, well, we used to blah, 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 or like, well, that's not how I blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You can say, well, it's not an addiction. Kind of. You're always going back to that thing that's comfortable that you use. Second, and I'm sorry in advance, yes, Teddy, it is also an assumption you're 100% correct. If I see someone at a company for 8 years and they've shifted positions and groups and focuses, I will still 100% reach out. If I see someone who's been a product manager in one group for 8 years at a large company, I'm generally going to pass because they've been working and focusing on one thing. And by and large, I've generally found that they're changing them out of their patterns that they've grown accustomed to over the years is extraordinarily difficult, more difficult than training someone to do it from scratch. It's the reason I only hire entry level or junior level people myself, because I don't want to retrain. It's much harder to break habits. Second hard truth, and guys, I'm sorry if this hurts, your situation that you're facing and the stories that you tell yourself are not unique. You're not that special. I promise you're not the only one in the world who's ever felt that way, who's ever gone through that struggle, whose company does X or team does X or expectations are X or working on X number of roles. You're not alone. These are things we all struggle with. These are things that other people have dealt with and gone through. Some failed, some succeeded, right? So whatever story you tell yourself, know that there are other people out there who have gone through the same process. And so what does it feel like? Right? What does addiction actually feel like in sourcing? If you guys are familiar with the Penrose stairs made famous by MC Escher, it's a never-ending staircase. Right? It feels like no matter what, you are just running up the stairs all the time. It doesn't matter. It's always up. Right? And as you're going up and up and up all of this, you're starting to realize that, hey, there are other recruiters or sourcers who are maybe getting more proficient at this than I am. Or, hey, my response rates on LinkedIn are dropping. Or, hey, I'm getting more people writing back to me saying, unsubscribe or please stop messaging me. Or kind of just going to, as Terry mentioned earlier, to the same well over and over and over. And it's just this trudging upstairs constantly. And what happens is at some point of all of this trudging upstairs, you wind up not having the energy to keep trudging on. And it looks a little more like this when you're falling down the never ending staircase. This is MC Escher's drawing, not the random dude falling down it. But here's the deal, guys. At some point, you hit that crash. This is what we'll call typically burnout. And we're like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Right? It's too much. I'm not seeing the success. You start maybe getting a little more complacent at work, maybe even a little lazy. You start feeling those feelings of entitlement. You start doing things cutting corners, right? Do you see yourself like looking at a list of like 100 people and going, oh, I'm sure they're fine. I don't need to look at all the profiles. Like Mark Tortorici said yesterday, right? Making sure you examine every person, at least just give them a look over. If you feel yourself doing that, that's a consequence of this feeling, of this trudging constantly upstairs, upstairs, upstairs until you cannot go up anymore. You need a reprieve. And this generally is what winds up happening. So how do we fix it? What do we do? Right. And so I looked at how I dealt with my own personal addiction in my own life as I was looking back retrospectively. And I realized, there's literally a guide for how to fix this. It comes in 12 steps. If you're familiar with them, these are the 12 steps, right? This is for any, what we'll call wildcard A program, right? NA, AA, OA, whatever it is. And I realized that if I took these and I broke them down, I could actually find the recruiter's 12 steps into what I did personally to evolve my career the same way I did my personal life. So looking at step one, right? This is really just understanding like, hey, I'm struggling with this thing. I need some help. For recruiters, it's just understanding that, hey, what got us here won't get us to where we want to be, right? And that like, we've been great. All of us are great. We're here at this conference to better ourselves, which is awesome. But like what got us here to today is not going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. Looking at step two, it talks about a power greater than ourselves to help us. For me, that was believing that the community was more powerful than the individual. Number three, this was one where you're like, okay, I can't do it on my own. I need to turn myself over to something bigger than me. Well, guys, this for me was deciding to be a part of the community instead of just in it. I wasn't just going to jump on the Facebook groups and the LinkedIn posts and just read and take data. I was going to start commenting. I was going to start liking things. I was going to start interacting a little bit more with the others in the community. This was a big one. Step four is identifying all of your faults and your character defects. Well, for me, that was understanding my opportunities for growth, as well as the places that we rested in comfort and why we do it, right? So like I was a LinkedIn recruiter, like freak show. I was the guy I was describing earlier, sending a bajillion emails and just like I only use LinkedIn Recruiter. There's a post, I think in 2018 where I said that and Tim Sackett just like, not cut me down in a negative way, but was just like, dude, like, what are you doing? You know? And I found a place of comfort, right? And why was I comfortable there? Because it was easy and I knew it and it wasn't scary and I knew what would happen. I knew if I sent out 100 emails that I would get X number of responses and that would turn into X and Y and Z, right? So that's the first four. Admitted to or higher power the nature of our wrongs. That's step 5 in the A program. For this, it's finding a mentor or a cohort, right? Find people that we can lean on for advice or guidance. I remember when I started my journey, I spoke to Aaron Daniels, a really good friend. I was like, hey, who should I talk to? Right. And he gave me a bunch of names. And one was Dean DaCosta, who's actually talking right after this. And I remember reaching out to Dean and just saying like, hey, man, would you be open to just like chatting? Never spoken at a conference, never any. I didn't have anything behind me, any merit or credit why Dean should have said yes. And he said, sure. When do you want to talk? I was like, what? Like that was it. Steve Levy, same thing. Derek Zeller, same thing, right? Finding people that we can lean on for guidance. And then were we ready to actually have in this case, higher power, remove these characters? For us, can we get comfortable enough to bring our struggles to the community, right? This doesn't mean like we're throwing everything out to the community, but can we even bury our ego and pride long enough to be comfortable to let other people know that we need help? And then can you actually come to the community and ask for it? Can you come and say, hey guys, I'm struggling with something. Can somebody help me? Right? It's a difficult thing to do. Then the last, if you read, the A is make a list of the persons we've harmed. This is make a list of our processes, our tools, and our turn rates. How often are we auditing ourselves and saying, hey, here's where I'm at, right? Here's our bottlenecks. Here are places where like, holy crap, this really isn't good. I need to take a closer look at this. Or do we just accept that this is how we do this thing? The folks who work with me will attest to the fact that I err on the other side of this, where maybe like it'd be okay to do the same thing for 3 whole months in a row instead of constantly changing. And the last 4, right? So in the program where you're supposed to make direct amends to people that you've hurt, in this case, that would be our equivalent of like, let's do some research on some new technologies and tools, right? How often are you guys demoing tools? I try to do at least 2 a month. And I'm not in need of new tools in any way whatsoever. I think my colleagues would destroy me if I brought another new tool back. But how often are we doing that? Just to know what's out there, just to analyze, right? Looking at the ROI and saying, whoa, this would save me personally 3 hours a week. What's that worth, right? And then the last 3, these are the maintenance steps, we call them. This is the stuff you're going to keep doing for the rest of your life. So like continue to take that personal inventory. Cool. So continue to analyze our process. And when we're finding those bottlenecks or monotony, right? When we're finding we're doing the same thing over and over again, are we seeking new solutions? Those are our amends to ourselves and to our business. 11, this one is getting closer to what, your higher power. For us, how can we be a part of the community? How can we actually contribute? So how do we go from liking and commenting on posts to actually posting and sharing some of our knowledge with the greater community, adding value to something bigger than you? And then the big one, having received help and blessings and growth from our community or mentors, are we able to give back to the community, right? So I'll tell you, I am blessed enough that this has been my area of focus, I think, since day one, both within my own program and within sourcing. And it pays dividends in every way you could imagine. None more so than a feeling of fulfillment and being a part of something, being connected to something bigger than me. And so we can't save the world alone. It's not possible. We need help. So what does that look like for us? Right? What's our 12-step group? What's our program, right? Like there's no Recruiters Anonymous that we can go to on Monday nights and sit with 9 other people while we bare our souls about the shitty hiring manager who won't give you a job description, right? So what's that for us? For us, that's our community, right? That for me is our conferences, right? Or excuse me, this is our group of people, right? The people I've met along the way, right? I've got Aaron Daniels and Sadia Ayaz, 2 really close friends. On the bottom right, Brian Fink, who's literally one of my best friends, who's also presenting later today, I've met. In that bottom photo, we've got Greg Hawks, who I believe is also presenting, and Jim Schneider and Jason Robb, people I've developed close and personal relationships with. Literally in the last year and a half, I have not been doing this long. I've only been a sourcer for 2.5 years, right? Before that, I was just a shitty recruiter. All these relationships came about because I wanted to put myself out there and get the support. Another is just, what about online communities, right? Are we joining just the simple ones of like on Facebook? I know I'm a millennial, I get it, right? So who use Facebook? Yeah, I use Facebook, right? Why? Because it's a great way to share content and interact with other people. But if we're not even a part of these groups, where are you getting your support? Where are you getting other people who are coming to the table and saying, I too struggle with that. I need help here, right? In the program, you're encouraged to join faith-based groups. Now, for many people, they go right to religion, but faith can be anything. Faith is just simply a deeper belief in something beyond a core guide but more of a foundation of a way to live that can support you and have something in common. So what is this for me? These are conferences, right? These are the ability to come with a group of people who are committed to, in this case, right, being bold, right? This is getting together and sharing, right? I know that if I were to fly over to Europe, that I could phone Kim and Gordon and be like, hey guys, I need a place to stay for tonight. And that no matter what, I cannot see them saying anything other than, yeah, come on over. Let's grab a drink and hang out. I've never met Kim and Gordon. It's the same thing for Liz in Germany, right? Same thing for Vanessa in South Africa. I'm actually planning to go to South Africa to go scuba diving. Vanessa's actually a dive master, right? I've never met Vanessa in person. If I did, it was very briefly at a SourceCon conference, right? But we have that sense of community. I've reached out to them when I had questions, right? I had questions about a conference I was doing. And I remember reaching out to Liz, like, dude, how the heck do you deal with this, right? It's having people who have a foundation deeper than just the fact that they're sourcers. They're sourcers who care. And if you're looking for any of this, on the bottom left, you're going to see that link for my Discord server. I've set up a Discord server. It's a free chat program. I've invited people from the industry to just come hang out and just chat with us, right? We have our channel chat rooms, video chat. Come be a part of it. Even if you're new, you've never done this before, you don't know anybody here, that's cool. That's totally cool. I was literally there 2 years ago. I get it, right? Join, say hi, ask a question, comment on somebody else's. No one in this group in SOSU is going to do anything other than love and support you because you're committed to loving and supporting your community, right? The next, so these have been really big helps for me, which is therapy and a sponsor. So this one for therapy, I'm just going to kind of say this, like, get a therapist. They are awesome. They're so awesome. I've been seeing a therapist for years and years and years and years, and it's honestly, I have no idea what I would do without it. The sponsor, a little bit harder. It'd be tough if you end up somewhere like, hey, I'm a recruiting addict and I need a sponsor, right? So what is that? Those are our coaches and our mentors. And if you're wondering what the hell's the difference between a coach and a mentor, here's the difference, right? Coaches are going to create that game plan with you based on their professional training. A mentor is going to be the one who says, hey, I've been in this shit. Let me talk to you about it, right? So coach for me would be someone like Craig Fisher, right? Who I use as someone like, hey, you professionally are very studied in this space. What would you do in X and Y and Z? A mentor would be someone like Guillaume, right? Who also struggles with ADHD like I do. And is someone that I feel comfortable enough to be able to say like, hey, what do I do here? What would you do? And that he would be able to share with me like, hey, I dealt with this in the past. Here's kind of what I did. Oh, okay. And I'm sure that up to this point right now, Guillaume had no idea that I viewed him in kind of a mentor type of a role of somebody I looked up to, but like, I guess no better time than the present in front of a couple hundred people to let you know that. But it's true, guys. We need these people, these groups of people in our life. And then sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes we need, as with addicts, we need like medical help. We need professional help with this. What does that look like for us? How do we get that? Can't go to a recruiting day clinic. For us, that's training. That's paying money and saying, I need something that's going to help me break this funk. I need a hardcore focused solution. And guess what, guys? These are all people who are speakers at this conference, right? Kim and Gordon do training. Shally does training. Mark Tortorici, Vanessa Rath, me and my team, we all do training. Just reach out. See what we can do. See if that's where you're at and you need that level of help. That's fine. Just reach out. Let's ask. Talk to us. Maybe it's just a question you have that you're struggling with this one thing, this one Boolean string, this one messaging outreach. Guys, just ask us, right? I don't know that I've ever charged anybody to help with a Boolean string or to write a message, right? If I can help, I want to help. And I know the other people on here are in the same boat, right? And as for training, just to lighten it up a little, I'm an indoor cycling instructor. So I do training every single week, sometimes in spandex. So I get the idea of how important it is. And training is really important to me, right? That's how we get stronger. That's how we get better. That's how we have lame excuses to tell our wife that we need those tiger print Nike stretchy pants, right? So next is why is spandex important? Brett, you clearly have not worn spandex recently. It's super important. So next is working your program, right? And our programs are all going to look a little bit different, just like they do in any of the 12-step programs. What does this mean? It means have clear boundaries. This means with yourself also. What are you accepting of yourself? What are you not? What are you accepting of your workplace or not? And I'm not saying that you should go to your supervisor or manager and say, like, I'm not accepting this anymore. Don't do that. It's a bad idea. But what I am saying is saying, hey, these are the things I expect from my job. And if I'm not getting them, maybe it's time to start looking elsewhere. It's accountability. Who are you accountable to? What does that look like? What are you accountable for? And then it's the controllable KPIs and metrics. I hate that people hold recruiters and sourcers accountable for placements. We do not make hires. They're called hiring managers, not hiring recruiters. Our job is to facilitate data. That's it. Company to market, market to company. And that looks like tons of different things, from conversations to messages to feedback to literal market research, right? Posting job descriptions, etc. But guys, what can you control? And are you aware of your controllable KPIs and metrics and how you're doing? The last is, do you have a snafu game plan? If you're not familiar with snafu, it stands for situation normal, all fucked up, right? What's your game plan for dealing with failure? Because here's the deal. In order to grow, you're gonna have to fail. It's the only way to do it. No one achieves consistent growth through consistent success. So important to remember, as Brian Fink mentioned earlier, fail early, fail often, but fail forward, right? It sucks. It doesn't feel good. I get it. We don't want to do it, but use it to push you forward, to get better, to get stronger, to improve yourself. Next, this was really tough for me. It's still something I struggle with and have to remind myself of in my daily journaling, which is failure is an event, not a person. Failure is the exact same as success, right? Anything that happens is a singular event. It doesn't define you. Because you made a placement does not mean you are a successful recruiter. Because a candidate turned down the job at the offer stage does not mean you are a failed recruiter. It means that that one thing was a failure. You are not a failure. And the last is that failure is a greater teacher than success. Francesca Gino and Gary Passan, they're professors at Harvard Business School. They literally wrote a paper that highlighted the fact that individuals and companies grow and improve using failure, but often stagnate or plateau with success, right? And a great example is how people struggle. Look at people who have learning disabilities. My wife is dyslexic, but graduated valedictorian from her high school and cum laude from college because she just had to work her ass off. And now she's got the grit to work through any situation life throws at her. And so where am I at now? Right? It's been 3.5 years. Once I started focusing on myself and getting better, I decided to run the New York Marathon. A year later, I also ran a half Ironman. And if you're thinking, oh, that's cool, you clearly haven't seen me in person. There's nothing about my body makeup that would make you think, oh, yeah, that'd be a natural fit. It's not. Very unnatural looking. But I decided I was going to do that and better myself, right? My sister is one of my best friends. We talk almost every day. My brothers and my father, we have a brothers weekend every year down in Florida that we all look forward to. And my wife and I just celebrated our 5-year anniversary 2 days ago. and are still happily married and working through everything that normal people work through. And so I'd love to leave you with this thought.
Professor Alexander explained to me, the idea of addiction we've all got in our heads, that story, comes partly from a series of experiments that were done earlier in the 20th century. They're really simple experiments. You can do them tonight when you go home if you feel a little bit sadistic. You get a rat and you put it in a cage and you give it 2 water bottles. One is just water and the other is water laced with either heroin or cocaine. If you do that, the rat will almost always prefer the drugged water and almost always kill itself quite quickly. So there you go, right? That's how we think it works. In the 70s, Professor Alexander comes along and he looks at this experiment and he noticed something. He said, we're putting the rat in an empty cage. It's got nothing to do except use these drugs. Let's try something a bit different. So Professor Alexander built a cage that he called Rat Park, which is basically heaven for rats, right? They've got loads of cheese, they've got loads of colored balls, they've got loads of tunnels. Crucially, they've got loads of friends, they can have loads of sex, and they've got both the water bottles, the normal water and the drugged water. But here's the fascinating thing. In Rat Park, they don't like the drugged water. They almost never use it. None of them ever use it compulsively. None of them ever overdose. You go from almost 100% overdose when they're isolated to 0% overdose when they have happy and connected lives.
So guys, super important to realize that the idea of the connections that we have are the things that are really going to help us through this process. It's not sobriety. And this is going to be the last note for you to hear.
Because the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection.
And so I encourage you to go through the rest of this day in this conference thinking of the definition of boldness, right? That fearless, courageous spirit. Maybe that's putting yourself out there, asking for help. Maybe it's sharing content. Maybe it's going up to somebody that you feel nervous about going up to and asking them for help. Maybe it's that time where you approach someone just at the right time in their life and you're there to ask them the question they needed to hear that saves them from whatever they're going through. So despite whatever you're dealing with, I encourage you guys, take this opportunity, be bold. You never know whose life you could be changing.
Wow. How does one follow that? I agree with Wim. I could stand up and give you a standing ovation right now. Batman, that was amazing. Please enjoy the comments coming through on the chat. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you for sharing your story. So raw. Thank you for putting yourself out there. And if anyone wasn't sure about our theme for the conference being be bold, be empathetic, wow, you really have laid the foundation. So Batman, thank you very, very much. That was an incredible presentation. And yeah, big shout out to you. And personally, I'd like to thank you for everything that you do in our community. Seriously, you make the global sourcing community a better place. And I look forward to that shark dive in South Africa very soon.
Me too. Excellent. I'm very, very blessed to call you a friend, Van. Appreciate all you guys. Guys, hit me up. I'm here for the next couple of days. So awesome. Join our Discord server, and I look forward to chatting with you.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to head back to the floor. We have Mr. Dean DaCosta coming up next. We're going to go there. We're going to spend a minute. We're going to catch our breaths. We're going to compose ourselves, and we'll be right back in to listen to Dean. Thank you very much, everyone.